And Jeff Beal, congratulations on receiving your 16th Emmy nomination for your work on Jesse Stone, Lost in Paradise. You've won 4 times before, including last year. So is it still exciting every time you get the news that you've been nominated?
It is. I was actually, it was fun. I was actually on the stage of the Kennedy Center conducting the dress rehearsal for House of Cards in concert when somebody came up to me and congratulated me. So that was an especially cool place to find out. And it was a really fun day because, House of Cards got a lot of nominations that same day, and I premiered this concert at the Kennedy Center that night. And we already knew, I had no idea what would happen, but it's always fun to celebrate this kind of news with other people. So I was not only able to enjoy the moment for myself, but congratulate a lot of other people that got nominated too on their nomination. So it was a fun day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you just won last year for House of Cards for its 3rd season. So give us an inside look at what the creative arts ceremony is like and what it's like when you get your name called out. Our readers would love to know.
Yeah, it's I hate to say it, it's pretty darn thrilling. And, you don't know what's going to happen. I think in the case of House of Cards, when I spoke to you last year, that was, I think, the 3rd time in a row that I'd been nominated. I had won, and you never know how this stuff's going to go. And they called my name, and I was just so happy. I was elated also because really at that particular time last year, aside from my wife, Joan, with me, who's a wonderful partner and been with me through this whole journey, I also had some musicians that worked with me on the score that was nominated. So being able to share that moment with them, thank them from the stage, and it's kind of magical, man. It's pretty darn cool. They put on a good show. It's a very long show, but you might have heard the creative arts ceremony's got a little shorter this year. We're finally splitting it up into 2, which I think is probably a good idea. There's a bit of fatigue that sets in, and you don't want that to happen. I mean, in the years that I've been there, I always try to stay to the end because, there's so many cool things to celebrate. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Are you going to both this year, or?
No, the way it's working, I'm not invited to both.
Okay.
They're basically doing two ceremonies. One for the basic general distinction is scripted will be one evening, the Saturday night, and then reality television, I'm assuming maybe also, I don't know if documentary is part of that, and web, non-scripted web and advertising will be the other night, and animation, I think. So I hope I'm getting that right, but basically we'll have 2 different ceremonies. So,
Yeah, it sounds right. I couldn't remember off the top of my head how they're doing it.
Yeah, that seems to be about the way it is. And, one of the fun things about this is just seeing people, I mean, composers, we're a great example. We're all sort of lone wolves, introverts, or we all sort of are off in our own little zone doing our thing. We don't get to see each other very much. So the fact that I've been nominated so many times, it's a really sort of fun time of year just to see a bunch of fellow composers, fellow artists, and to kind of celebrate what we all do.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's talk about your work on Jesse Stone. This is, I think, the 9th one of these films that you've done, if I've did my research correctly. So is it, at this point, is it hard not to repeat yourself, or how do you make it fresh every time?
Yeah, this has been, in fact, it's really fun. I've organized a little screening at the DGA of this film because I kind of wanted to share it with people and share a little bit of the process because, really from the beginning, there's a core team that has been sort of these movies have really been sort of a very special part of Tom Selleck's creative life, and also Robert Harmon, the director who's directed everyone except for one of them, and also Michael Brandman, sort of the co-writer who sort of took over after Robert Parker passed away and ran out of books, literally. There were only so many books existing on this character. But this is sort of a hybrid type of show, like you suggest, because it really is, there is sort of a serial nature to it. It's a sort of a series of movies based on a character. And yes, there's a challenge to this. I mean, one of the challenges we face is is the through line, not only dramatically, but the through line musically that exists between all these movies. And certainly one of the toughest choices we make every time we do a film is how much of the thematic material from previous films we will reprise. There are some sort of very standard pieces that always sort of manage to crawl their way into the movies. But there's also it's also a world that you're creating, and that's the challenge of this particular world. Is so unique and so fascinating because it's really, the only thing I can think of that really is a good example was maybe on the comedy side. I did 8 Seasons of Monk with Tony Shalhoub, and in the same way, that show was not. It's like Columbo or something. It's not so much about the crime or solving the mystery. It's really about the character. And the thing I love about this show, about this series of movies, is really there's always a crime to solve. There's a procedural element to it, but really makes the movie special is this character of Jesse and his life and what's happening and sort of the space he lives in. And that to me feels like a lot of what the music has always been about. It's always been about sort of his sort of inner the storms of his inner psyche, his alcoholism. He's divorced and just like perennially, not able to form any sort of meaningful connection. And in fact, one of the things I love about this particular movie is like probably a lot of lonely men, or just people in general, he finds great companion and great solace in a dog. And we've had a couple stars, really co-stars of these movies over the years. And this particular movie, there's a whole storyline that really centers around this new dog by the name of Steve, who I don't want to give anything away for people who haven't seen it, but it's a really fun dynamic because, when you've got a speaking part and when you have the dog, there's a sort of a nonverbal dance that happens, obviously, in these scenes. And one of the things that always cracks me up is how believable and how much when it's well photographed, how much you can project onto a dog. And really, when you do it right, you don't need the words a lot of the times. The story is there, So aside from Jesse hanging out with a dog, a lot of times it's Jesse in his apartment with a bottle of booze, with a glass of booze, and putting on a record or something. So there's a throwback quality to this brand, this character that's sort of it's sort of a lyrical kind of space and a lyrical sort of cinematic timing that people really seem to love. It's a funny story, Zach, but I was at a film music conference last fall, I guess it was, in Germany. They gave me an award, and I was invited to give a master class, and it was really fun. It kind of shows how far what we do here in Hollywood has sort of traveled around the world. And I was invited to give a master class, and I've sort of dragged out some of the usual suspects. I'm showing House of Cards and going back in my film work, showing Pollock and some of the early stuff. And this guy raises his hand from the back and looks at me furiously. I thought he was going to just strangle me. And he says, "I can't believe you're showing all this stuff and you're not showing anything from what I think is your best work, which is Jesse Stone." And there was such a passion in his voice, and I recognized it immediately because, a funny thing happened with this film. Aside from people, it's great when you hear from your fans about your work. Of course, that's icing on the cake, right? Mm-hmm. We were able to release a CD of the Jesse Stone music after we'd done maybe 3 or 4 films, right? Through Varese Sarabande. For whatever reason, however the deal was made with the studio, was only for a limited run of 1,000 units. No digital, no nothing. So for the next 5 or 6 years, I've had this constant stream of emails from fans begging me for this music because they just love this music. And the CD went up to like $500 on Amazon for years and years. That's what it was. If you really wanted to buy it, it was insane. So I said, this is ridiculous. Of course, as an artist, nobody makes money selling music anymore anyways, right? So, but especially as a film composer, really, CDs are really sort of like another extension of our brand. They're more important advertising. And also for my relationship with people that like this music, I wanted them to have it. So basically for several years, I just started giving it away as donation ware to anybody that would write me. But that was getting old, and I was getting tired of doing that and frustrated. And thank God that, Bob Townsend from Varese Sarabande approached me, and we finally, it's the nice sort of really cool serendipity of this whole year, finally getting a nomination for this music, was that literally this month we also released what we're calling the Jessamy Stone Ultimate Edition. It's a 2 CD edition of music from all 9 films that is widely available, and it's not going to run out. It's not just 1,000 units. So it's nice to be able to finally get that music out into the hands of the people. And you know, I think I took that guy's note, and I think I will. You know, I will definitely show some scenes the next time I give a class. And to be serious about it for a second, I do want to say that you know, the filmmakers behind this, Robert Harmon, the director, who's just been such a great, really voice in this whole thing. You know, he's such a great visual stylist, and he's always had this wonderful sense of the space for music. He's a real musical fan. He's actually an amateur musician himself. And really, you know, you need a director that understands what music can do in a scene, and to really trust that, and to build sequences that are not just simply driven by action or by a constant stream of dialogue. And that's exactly, you know, the type of filmmaking that Jesse Stone is. So I'm just sort of, you know, really happy to be on that train.
Absolutely. It's funny, this music has struck such a chord, not to not to put too literal a pun on it, with so many people. You know, you've worked both in film and television. Do you differentiate between the two at all when you're making music, or maybe that's part of where the appeal of the music comes from?
I think the lines are, if anything, have become more blurry since when I started many years ago. You know, I think really the only arbiter now is just the quality of the project. You know, you look at what's happened with a show like House of Cards, or you know, the type of filmmaking that happens. You know, it's funny actually, the Jesse Stone movies, because those are a good example of a type of film. There's a type of filmmaking in that used to be like a mid-range. That used to be the mid-budget kind of Hollywood film you'd see. Maybe you'd see a crime thriller or something that's character-driven and not dominated by CGI or comic book, you know, storylines, which are fine. But you know, my career is you know, listen, I don't. You know, I'd like to say I've meticulously chosen everything I do. Of course, you don't. Your career chooses you, and I guess when I look at my body of work, you know, I think that people come to me for a specific sound, a specific sensibility, and I think the things I love doing, the things I really excel at, are when I have a project that's really has a strong. One of the things that really unifies something that I can see when I look back in the mirror at my body of work is something that's actor driven. Where there's a project that really focuses on a really strong performances and actors. That's something I really enjoy doing, and I think I love supporting them in music. And also this whole other area that's really been fun for me, and I'm starting a new one right now for Al Gore. You know, I'm doing a follow-up to Inconvenient Truth. He's doing a sort of a follow-up film, but you know, this whole world of documentary film has kind of exploded, and the types of music that are happening in documentary film is really branching out. So there's just all sorts of opportunities, and I'm sort of like looking to further blur the lines, or to challenge myself, and probably the most significant thing that's happened, even more than the last time we talked last year, is this whole push into concert music that I've really been enjoying. The House of Cards and concert show, which we premiered at the Kennedy Center, which we'll also be doing many more performances of, doing some in Europe next year and other places, but also doing commissions. I've worked with a choreographer on the second feature ballet score, and just all sorts of things. And really, for me, that variety is really, I think it's one of the things that keeps you on your game, and keeps you creating. But the interesting thing that I've found, even in the concert world, has been that the thing that I always go back to, which relates to your original question, is it's really always about this collaborative effort. It's always about telling some sort of a story. I realize that's what I love to do, and that's really the unifying role that I tend to play as a composer. I tend to, at the end of the day, it's great to be interesting and figure out what new ways of doing things you can, but at the end of the day, it's really about how can we tell this story, and how can we tell it in a way that's engaging and that maybe we haven't exactly told before.
Mm-hmm. So give us some insight into what your process is like, and in particular with this film. Where do you start?
Well, it's usually with terror, because what the editors are so good at doing is they'll take the best of the music from the past. In this case, it was 8 films, and stuff the movie with it. So then, I'll watch these things and I'll go, wow, So the first sort of hurdle I have to get over is forgetting about that and figuring out what the new puzzle is. And usually, the fun thing about these movies, and I'm so glad he's going to be at our screening this week, because really Tom Selleck is really involved as a producer and a co-writer on this. Robert Harmon is really involved. So what we'll really, even though we've done a lot of these, nobody's phoning it in, and it's not, there's a delicacy to each one of these stories, which always feels like we're walking on eggshells and just got to do it just right. It's like a recipe that needs a special, kind of, overseeing each time you cook it or something. So we will have a very detailed spotting meeting. We'll go through the whole film in detail and really talk about what's going on. And in each movie, there's some stuff that comes into Jesse's life, and usually that stuff that comes into his life, there's music that will want to relate to that we really don't have before. In this particular movie, there were a couple really interesting things. One was, of course, I already mentioned the dog. The second is this young teenage girl who has really sort of lost her way, and Jesse, being this sort of paternal guy, also, he sort of takes her under his wing and tries to help her. And really the third thing that's really interesting to this film, which was a little different than things we've done, is there's a sort of clue that he has to find he has to go interview this inmate who's sort of like a Hannibal Lecter character. He's a convicted serial killer, and so Jesse has to sort of walk into this lion's den of this strange psyche and spend some time with this guy. And that was particularly interesting, because we haven't really there's always been sort of dark characters and sort of not too nice people, but this was, I think, the first time Jesse really had to be in the presence of that kind of evil, that kind of sort of pathological person. And so for that, actually, it was interesting. Something we hadn't done a lot before, but there was also some sort of sound design elements to the score and some more sort of dark ambient things, just to sort of give that space a world, which is fun, which is unlike a lot of the stuff we usually do, which is much more thematic, much more theme driven and more spare.
Mm-hmm. These films have been a part of your career from just about the very beginning. So I guess in a sense you could say that you've grown and developed as the films have. What have you learned over your career that benefits you in your work now?
Well, it's funny. I think it's I want to say it's Charles Ives said it, but I can't remember who said it. But he said, most people spend their whole life writing the same piece of music over and over and over again. And that was, he didn't say that in a disparaging way. What he meant to say was, you are who you are. And I think I think the thing that's really challenging about these films is that they live, there's no place, like I said earlier, there's no place to hide. There's absolutely no net. And so you're forced to do a few things, which I find is always the most difficult. It's easy to be complex. It's easy to be big and sort of layered. It's a lot more difficult to be simple and spare and surgical. And the thing that still I find fascinating and enjoyable about these particular films is it's always about the simplest gesture, not simple-minded, but simple in terms of beautiful and elegant. And those sort of principles are something I've always loved doing in music. And I feel like finding new little variations within that universe has always been fun for me. It's very important, I think, to everybody, that we don't want it to feel like we're ever reinventing the wheel for people. And part of the thing that keeps it feeling like we're still in his world is that there's a sound and a sensibility, but you just simply can't regurgitate the same music through 9 movies. It would never sustain. So there's actually been a ton of variation and little changes in each film. I guess the thing that I try to connect with when I'm writing is there's a nobility to this guy that I'm part of the fascination of this is not always succeeding. And definitely even on this film, there were some times when I just stepped in it and went the wrong way. And the thing that the guys brought me back to, which really helped me get back on track, was the whole idea that this guy is even though he's flawed, he's got this sense that he's got to do something. His job, solving a crime, bringing someone to justice, is the one thing he can do in the world that he's good at, that he can make something work at. And I love that. There's something to root for, you know, and you always need that in your characters. You don't write down to your characters. You want to write from the inside, from a place of truth. And Tom was really good at articulating that, especially on this movie. And I enjoyed that. And I appreciated that, because I had just been doing a lot of House of Cards. To be honest with you, it's a much darker, cynical show, even though there's humanity in there and we're very important and we very carefully try to let the humanity come out. This was not that world. And I think I kind of needed to be jolted out of that a little bit, which was good. It was good for me, you know?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations again. And it was a pleasure talking with you again.
My pleasure, Zach. Good to speak with you as well.
Thank you. Well, I'll see you around, hopefully. Have a great day.
Thank you, Zach. You too. Thanks for doing it, man. Take care.
Of course. You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.